My name is Jacob Spellis, CEO of Vital Health, and today I want to talk about a housing component that's in treatment. So when you look at some of the data with SAMHSA, 38% of all homeless people abuse alcohol, and about 26% of homeless people abuse drugs. So that's a huge portion. So when you look at the hierarchy of needs, right, of an individual, shelter, food, water is the basic necessity. Like I always see going down the street and people see a homeless individual and they have a, why lie, I need a beer sign or something of that nature. And people say, I don't get it why they're drinking. I'm thinking in my mind, like, why aren't they drinking more? It seems like they're being depressed. They're going through a lot. That's a way to cope that you might learn. Could also be a cope for mental health. I've worked with patients, sadly enough, that would hear voices, and the only thing that would calm their voices down was a beer. It might sound silly to an individual that doesn't have those lived-in experiences or work with this type of population. So at Vital Health, one of the gaps I see in our community is one, access to treatment, and two, kind of having a fair shot. Some of the housing programs that we helped start or housing programs we partnered with was eliminating that barrier of housing for them to get services. There's a difference between residential treatment centers. You might be in there for 30, 60, 90 days. You don't leave. You're sleeping in bunks with individuals. You're doing groups all day long versus, let's say, individuals that step down from that level of care might need housing. Part of our programs in the sober living facilities is they get to have the best of both worlds, right? So they get to learn autonomy, they get to learn social skills, they get to learn all these things. Because remind you, if I'm homeless for 3 years and I haven't been at home, do I know how to even shower? Do I know how to cook food? Do I know how to manage a budget? I see it all the time. People with mental health, they get a check at the first of the month and they blow all their money on steaks. And you're like, that seems silly. I think it's because of the mental health. Or I see they get their check and they're like, man, my friend really needs $750. I'm like, where'd you meet this guy? The internet. They're just my friend, or it's a family member stealing their checks, right? Creating that stability for each patient is so important. I was one of those individuals. I was incarcerated with a 23-cent check. Maybe it was 33 cents, but it was one of those. And at that time, I almost didn't have an option for housing. I was lucky enough to get into something, but a lot of people had to go to shelters. A lot of people re-offend crimes, just trying to stay afloat. The stability of the housing is to make sure that they get the right adequate treatment to then eventually live on their own. My philosophy always here is let people get on their feet first, go through transformation phases, get a part-time job and work your way up slowly to make sure that your main problem, mental health, substance abuse, is not impacted. Because if I'm depressed and I'm just sitting at a park bench, do you think I'm gonna go get a counseling service? Because what can that person tell me? Because I'm homeless. If I'm using drugs, alcohol, I might want to get sober, but I'm living on the side of a motel. How am I going to get there? Nobody thinks about it, and one of the barriers that I always, I had a suspended license for like 3, 4, 5 years maybe, and I couldn't get places. I'd have to get to all these places, and you got to buy a bus token, and you got to ride the bus, and individuals might not, unfortunately read the best. Literacy rates are affected, a lot of times with this population. So when people come into, let's say, treatment, that's where they get the right adequate tools. Case management to help navigate the system. Therapy to work, like why am I homeless in the first place? Why did I use drugs? Why did these areas of my life keep being impacted? And that's when a therapist would use cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of modalities. When we think about that, the biggest barrier is housing. And imagine I could live somewhere for 90 days, build all this stuff up versus an individual who's homeless. How am I going to get to treatment? I don't even have money. I might not even know what day of the week it is. It might be so impacted, So I think that's crucial. One of the things I always, I see the gap is safety for our patients. A lot of the shelters, you might be an 18-year-old male and you go into a shelter with 50-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds that are way stronger than you, and they might not be the best of individuals, and they might be, looking at you as prey. So safety was always real big. People don't feel safe. That's everything that you have. I'm real big on individualized care with individuals. You got to find the right individual that wants help. The last thing is support. Building a culture where you have a support system outside of treatment, because the goal of treatment, it sounds kind of weird, but make sure you're not in treatment again. Just like if you have a sprained arm, the surgeon's not going to keep seeing you every week because it's healed. Same thing with us. Once you get through these problems. And housing was always big to me. You know, I was 16, 17 years old, you know, homeless myself. And, you know, I remember that feeling like being on somebody's couch and they don't want you. They're eating and you can't eat. You're not having money. Sleeping on park benches, sleeping on grass, freezing, lying to people like, yeah, I got a place while you lose weight. You know, you haven't eaten in a long time. You look bad and stuff, and not being able to get the haircuts. You know, I remember those vividly, those times. So at Vital Health, we partner with a couple of people. You know, we also have a women's house that's geared to meet their specific needs and women that work with them and some of the other challenges that they might come in with treatment. My name is Jacob Spellis for Vital Health, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Please leave a comment or like our videos and give us some feedback. Thank you.